Are you ready to take your business to the next level and make the money you want so that you can create the impact you desire? Then you're in the right place. It's possible to run a successful business built around your life. Get ready for a little bit of tough love and a whole lot of strategy to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. If you're ready to get out of your own way and step into the role of CEO, then let's go. I'm Amy Traw, and this is the Motivated CEO Podcast. Today, we are talking about one of my favorite topics in the whole entire world, and that's metrics. Metrics. So what do you do when you know you need to be tracking this data? You're getting this data. Yet, what do you actually do with it? Well, today's guest is going to help us demystify some of this data drama that is going on. And I am so excited to be joined by Alyssa Lang. She is the owner and founder of Magnetic Profits. And Magnetic Profits empowers course creators, coaches, and creative women-owned businesses to understand their financials and implement holistic business strategies that support long-term growth, scaling them to 7 figures and beyond. And Alyssa, this is a topic that nobody really talks about a lot, yet is the one foundational element to growing a multiple 6-figure, 7-figure business. So let's address the elephant in the room first off. Like, why aren't people tracking their data? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think the big core piece is it's really easy to put that information into a spreadsheet, a Google sheet, some sort of like calculation, some sort of fun formula, accounting system. We're talking about finances. There's so many ways that we could showcase the info. But I think where people are very resistant is they don't know how to read the data, how to like actually translate it. What is it telling them? What's the cause and the effect? I also think a lot of the times people are looking at KPIs only at like the end metric when there's usually what we call lead and lag metrics, which are what is the cause to create the effect. And I think a lot of people forget that disconnect, which is fine. We didn't start the business thinking that we'd have to know these things. We thought we'd just be able to create a service and hopefully we make money and the people come running.
Exactly. One of those like build it and they will come. But that's
Yeah.
not the reality of the online space. It really does take that strategic approach. And
hmm
leveraging your data is one of those things that will show us exactly where to go. It's that little trail of breadcrumbs, which is right in front of us if we'd only take the time to look at it.
Yeah.
And you're right. So often it's there. The data's already
Yeah.
there. That's the beauty of the technology and day and age that we're living in is that
Mhm.
there are so many dashboards. There are so many analytics, but
Mhm.
sometimes we get overwhelmed and we don't know what to do with it, as you said. So where would someone start when they're like, okay, I know this data is in my business. I don't know how to read it. I don't know what to do with it. What would you advise them to be step one?
Yeah, I think the end goal is, I'm sorry, the first step is looking at the end goal. So let's just use a really simple thing that most people probably are familiar with in this space. Maybe it's a webinar. If someone like hosts some sort of a workshop or a webinar, if you want to be able to sell on the back end, either to your service or a course or whatever it is that you're selling, if I want to make $10,000 from this one webinar, this one instance, I think so many people are so fixated on just that end number of 10,000 that they beat themselves up for not having that result. And usually the first step is what is the identifying thing that you're trying to get your result in, then that helps us work backwards on like, well, now what KPIs, what metrics, what things do we need to have in place to get there? That's like the first step.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think we forget that so
Yeah.
often that when you begin with the end in mind, you can reverse engineer
Yeah.
anything, no
hmm
matter how crazy big that goal is. Because what I see happening, I don't know if you see this a lot too, is that a lot of times the offer suite doesn't support the end goal. It's like if
Mm,
you look at industry standards for, okay, what are the average conversion rates for a webinar? And you're like, I'm going
yeah.
to host this webinar, and you have 10 people sign up, and you're expecting this $10,000 launch on a product that's $100. Wait a minute, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So
Yeah.
let's dive in a little bit deeper to reverse engineering. So if we know, okay, this is our end goal, how
hmm
can we leverage the data to make
Yeah.
it more attainable?
Yeah. So think of like metrics and think of your end goal or the path or the thing that you want to create as the path to get there is like little dominoes. So it's the best way I can describe this whenever I like try to like explain this. So you're setting up those little dominoes when you're little and you push the one domino, the front domino you push would affect all the back ends, right? So in order to get that first domino to fall, we need to understand reverse engineering. If your goal is 10,000 and your average, if you've hosted maybe one or two other webinars, your data, going back to data, will tell you everything. This will be able to tell you trending data. So like for the past two, our average conversion rate was 10%. So that means let's take that domino, one domino further back and say, how many leads would we need in order to get the number of people to have a 10% conversion rate to result in 10K? So then we go even further back. And I think that's where people only go like a couple layers deep. I'm going like first domino, like what do we really have to do here? So the next domino before that, so before even just having maybe it's 1,000 leads, if that's math, if math is mathing, I think it's 1,000 leads, 10%. I'm in the finance space, but man, do I love my calculators. So 1,000 leads is what we need. So how are we going to find the leads? So that's the domino before that. How are we going to attract these people? Because as we know, if my average ad that I'm putting out there is only about 10% of those people are even clicking it, then that might mean we need 10,000 people, 10,000 eyes on that ad specifically. Okay, so now let's work one step before that. How many like ad copies, ad creatives? What are we going to have to change? What are we going to need to do? If we can just start by continuously looking at it like a line of dominoes, with the end domino being 10K, then what each domino do we need to have in place to fall and create that outcome?
And it's so fun to watch it all come
Hmm.
together, isn't it? Because what
Yeah.
happens is a lot of times we'll get so wrapped up in that end goal that we forget to look at those dominoes. We forget
Hmm.
about the cause and effect. But
Yeah.
when you can really disconnect from it and realize that, hey, this is all just data. It's each piece of it is
Mhm.
one domino in the chain, and
Yeah.
it's just a mirror reflecting the current reality. It's one of those things that if you don't look at it, you're not going to know what you don't know. It's like when you have, you just ate a salad and you got a big old hunk of salad in your teeth
Yeah.
and, you're walking around, nobody says something. It's there, but you don't know it's there
Yep.
until you look in the mirror. Well, data's the same thing. So I love how you approach it by, okay, let's go back even deeper, even deeper,
Yeah.
even deeper, because you're right. There is often that disconnect that we think, oh, well, it's just this. Well, is it really? And that curiosity is a very powerful tool.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. Curiosity is like, honestly, I was just talking to someone right before this call, and we were talking about curiosity is one of the best things that you can ever adopt in your business. Because instead of getting frustrated or mad that like maybe you aren't hitting your sales goal for your services for this month, and maybe you plan to land two more clients, instead of getting sad, mad, and thinking it's all about you and that like it's because you're not a good person or you beating yourself up for it, instead just approach it from curiosity and say, I'm really curious why that actually wasn't the case. Was it because I didn't have as many networking events that I didn't go to? Is it maybe because like I just kind of disappeared from stories? Like, and then instead of approaching it from this like overwhelm, this sadness, that's just what gets you down. Instead, it's like, I'm curious. I'm open. Oh, I'm open to new ideas.
Yeah, it really gets us into that growth mindset. And that was a
Hmm.
really big turning point for me in business too, when
Yeah.
I just started viewing business as an experiment. And that's when I
Yeah.
started to have fun
It's
because I
fun.
started to just do
Yeah.
experiments. It was like that you form a hypothesis and then you test
Yep.
some things out and you see what happens.
Yeah.
And you approach your business from that perspective of how can I attract more
Yeah.
leads? How can I make this work? Because there's
Yep.
so much proof possibility
Yep.
out there. There's a ton of income-based marketing out there too, which is a
Yep.
whole nother story for a whole nother
Yep.
day. But anything we want to achieve, we can. It just comes down to experimenting and leveraging your data within your own
Yep.
business. And that's what ends up saving us time and saving
Yeah.
us energy and saving us so much frustration in this crazy world we're living in.
Totally. 100%. I love all that.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes that you see people making when it comes to looking at their data and leveraging it? What just do you see all the time that you're like, I want to preach this from the rooftop. Stop doing this.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to pinpoint it to the exact thing, and I swear I hear all the time, which is I should start posting on social media to get clients. I mean, how many times do you hear that?
Yes.
Like
Oh my
all
gosh.
the time. Like
Drives me
it
crazy.
is always the number one thing that comes to mind because like the first thing I always say back to them is like, do you have proof? Is your niche even there? Is that where they hang out? There's so many questions that come from whenever someone tells me this because when it happens, I work also in the accounting space, like here at Magnetic, but I also have another business that we work specifically with bookkeepers and accountants. And in that business, we have a lot of our bookkeepers and accountants that will tell me all the time, I need to be on social media, but they like niche in like construction. Tradesmen do not hang out on social media. They're busy building America. We're here in America. That's where I'm recording. So that heads America, but I'm sure listeners are from everywhere. But like in that's what they're doing. They are out there. They are nailing the things. They are making sure things are set up correctly. The foundations are right in your homes. They don't have time to scroll on social media. They don't have time for these things. So I tell people all the time, where's your audience? Where are the people? Like the data, and like testing these things, checking it, making sure it works. Like have you put in that work? Have you even tried to attempt to do market research, which goes back to data to give you facts if your audience even needs it? So that's always my like most prominent example of like everybody wants to do it. I'm like, but why put the pressure if you don't have to do it?
100%. I couldn't agree more because I hear that all the time. I just had a conversation the other day with someone about this very thing. She has a local service-based business in the wedding industry. And she's like,
Yeah.
I need to be on social media. I need to be on social media. I'm like, no, you need to be like in person networking, like getting referrals, growing. Like,
Yeah.
where are your current clients finding you?
Yeah.
Talk to them, figure out where your current clients are finding you and double down there because most people, you're right, they don't need nearly as big of a
Yeah.
social media imprint as they think they do. And it's almost like so many business owners are stuck in this weird duality where they're trying to be influencers. And it's like, okay,
Yes.
are you an influencer? Do you really want to be that? Or do you
Yeah.
want to be building a business? And I think that's where it gets really frustrating for a lot of business owners because they're so busy doing their thing, providing the service, making the product that social media is kind of the, on the back burner. And then you show up exhausted and overwhelmed and it's just draining.
Yeah, 100%. I think just people, just in general, see other people doing something and they automatically, like, whether it's a software, we see that all the time. It's like software switching and getting excited because the industry is now talking about this new proposal system or this new, whatever it might be. Or I saw X Guru online saying that they make 100K. I'm like, but you don't know all the details.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I know, like, we work some multimillionaire women and we also work with like people who are at six-figure stages. Like, we worked from all over. I have some clients of ours who are making multiple six figures who are actually profiting more money than our seven-figure clients. And so when people are out there sharing this vanity metric, it looks sexy, it looks pretty, it looks cute, it looks beautiful. And yet you're killing yourself to match someone's energy that you don't know behind the scenes if that's actually what they're taking home. And out of what that money are they actually taking home? Is it even healthy? You know what I mean?
Right. Oh my gosh, that's such
Hmm.
a great point. The
Hmm.
context of it, because a lot of these multi seven figure earners have very large teams creating
Hmm.
everything on the back end so that they
Yeah.
just have to show up and do the one thing. So
Hmm.
to compare ourselves with someone else, you don't know what's going on in the back end. You don't know
Yeah.
what their ad spend is. You don't know what their overhead is. It's like
Yeah.
when I see things like that, I flip into like curiosity mode. I'm like, oh, I wonder where her profit margin is.
Yeah.
I wonder what her
Totally.
overhead is. Because yes, you can be making a ton of money, but you can also be spending it just as quickly. And that's something
Yeah.
else you guys do really well is
Yeah.
really help business owners create more of a profit margin and really
Yeah.
keep more of what they're bringing in. Where do you find that some of those biggest leaks occur?
I think leaks can be team, and that's always most companies, especially in the online space, mostly because of what we do and how much money we have to pour into them. But I think a lot of people have this like very interesting perspective on bringing someone on to help them in their company. When someone thinks employee, almost everybody I talk to immediately thinks full time, 40 hours, like benefits, 401ks, healthcare, medical, dental, which is great in the grand scheme of things if you want to do that. We offer that. That's what we take care of our employees. We've always gone with them full time, but it took me forever. I started with contractors, then it turned into part-time employees. But I think there's just like this idea that it needs to be this big, you can literally hire someone as an employee for 5 hours a week or even 5 hours a month. Like it doesn't have to be, there's no rules. There are rules around what is a contractor versus an employee. And that's another big mistake that I see a lot of people make. And if anyone who is listening right now is wondering if you are actually employing people the right way, I would highly recommend that you just go to the IRS website and look up contractor versus employee tests. This is one of the things that I see the most people get hit with in businesses is because if you are paying someone who's supposed to be an employee, AKA if you control their time, if you control what they're doing and you control the software, you control a lot of these different components. Most likely, that's not always a defining test. There are some strategic tests on the IRS website. Will usually determine if someone needs to be an employee versus a contractor. But what happens is, if let's just say you were a contractor and I hired you, Amy, and I said, hey, come help me with graphic design. I tell you, you need to be here from 9 to 3 o'clock and you need to do all the work, but I'm going to pay you as a contractor because as a business owner, I don't want to fork out the employer taxes. So this helps me save money. All is handy. But then I let you go because the business is downsizing. You go and file unemployment. Guess what's going to happen? The unemployment's going to come to me as the business owner and say, hey, we actually need proof to either like approve this or deny it. You have to now show proof. And they say, wait, they're actually saying that they should have been an employee based off these rules. Because as much as we love our team and much as we trust them now, people will come later to say, you know what, never mind. Now I actually want to come for you and tell you that I was supposed to be an employee. So I don't want to put that into someone's head. I just want people to make more awareness around that because it's a major mistake that I see. And then they come back and you have to pay back taxes. It's a whole thing. You have to pay for amending returns for that employee. It's a whole nightmare. So just being very aware of that, but not the other thing too is around employees and contractors and just this big spend that the leaks are coming from is when we talk about employees, I think a lot of people think too it has to be really expensive, that it has to be a lot of money. If you go to Gusto, which is like our preferred payroll software, if you go to Gusto and you can look up like Gusto payroll calculator and you can plug in what you think you're going to pay that someone on an hourly rate, number of hours, stuff like that, maybe what state they might be in, they'll actually tell you about how much it's going to cost you to maintain that team member. It's not as expensive as people think it is. What does become expensive? 401ks, healthcare, medical, vision, all that stuff. So that's a big part is team. But I also think people see leaks in that area. And I'm sure you see this all the time. I see a lot of these leaks because they don't know how to use their team. They don't know what to do with them. They're also being emotional, going back to data. They're making decisions off of emotions and not pure fact of their team. What are their actual KPIs? How do I know my VA is successful? How do I know my marketer is producing for me? Because I'm tracking that stuff. And that's where people are really missing the mark. Because if you can have your team perform, those leaks are going to be plugged and you're going to have a really successful, very profitable business that can bring in a lot of money that can support you if you do it right.
Oh, amazing. Yes. And that is so critical as a business owner to have in place that solid foundation because we are running businesses here. We're not just
Yeah.
doing these cute little hobbies on the side. No, if you want to build and scale a business, you need to treat it as such. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's why I love having people like you in
Yeah.
this world to help us navigate this because tax laws are always changing.
Hmm.
Legal is always changing. The FTC just came out with a whole bunch of new stuff at the end of last year. So it's important to have experts that are your go to resources in these fields, especially when it comes to the financial, the legal aspects of running a business. Because, like you said, yeah, that may not be the most fun thing right now to be doing, but it is going to save you so much time, frustration, and headaches on the back end. And the
Yeah.
other thing you touched upon too, which I think is so important, is the emotional piece. We
Mm.
tend to make our metrics all about us.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's data. Data doesn't
Yeah.
have feelings. Data's just there to be the bestie that's like, hey, just letting you know this is going
Yeah.
on. You know, it gives
Yeah.
you that tough love that sometimes you need, but it's not a reflection of our
Yeah.
worth, of our abilities. It's just there to guide us and kind of nudge us in the right direction.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so funny because like something that comes to mind when I'm like talking about the emotional side versus like the logistics. So I'll use myself as an example. So at my company, my other company, it's called Workflow Queen. We generate anywhere from like 1.5 to 3 million a year, depending on how the success of our company is going. It's a really big gap. It's only because like emotionally sometimes like I energetically don't want to lead and I can see how that affects our team sometimes and our income. So going back to emotions. But one big thing that recently came up for me is I was on one of my mastermind calls, and on this call, my coach was like, yeah, you should just go bigger, go bigger. And it was like 10 million, go to 10 million. I'm like, cool. For so long, for like, I'm not kidding you, the past like 3, 4 months of 2024, I was like 10 million, 10 million. That was like my goal because someone told me somewhere it should be 10 million based off of like what we were doing. And I should just go big and do all these things, right? I'm sitting here thinking, and I was sitting by a campfire with my friend in Arizona, and she's like, "Is that what you really want?" And I was like, "You know what I really want?" And this is going to sound crazy, but for the people who really understand growth, won't judge me for this. I want to take home 1 million a year myself. This is beyond the company. This is, I'm going to take that home, reinvest it in property. I'm going to give me what I want in my life, like the things that make me happy, be able to use it in charity and donations. I want to take home $1 million. So she's like, then why are you obsessing about 10 million if that with a $10 million company, you have to have a lot more overhead, a lot more team, a lot more execution, a lot more expansion and growth and all these things, right? So we actually reverse engineered. Thankfully, my one of my biz besties is also CPA, so like we can nerd out on numbers all day. So we worked this number backwards. So I'm sharing this because it was so crucial when we worked the number backwards and I said, I want to have at least 350K cash reserves in the bank account for the business. So that way we're settled, we're good, we don't have to worry. Also, I need to pay X dollar amount in taxes because I'm in the state of California. Plus, for federal, I'm probably going to be in a 34% tax bracket. Then we worked the number backwards even more. Now, how much do I want for my profit margin? So I want a 40% profit margin. So we worked all this reverse engineering, going back to KPIs. We reverse engineered to come up with a total of all we have to make, and I know that sounds like a big goal still for some people, all we have to do is 6 million. I just cut off $4 million of production that needs to be made for no reason. To have more overhead, say we'd have a higher profit margin, like it, or a lower profit margin, it wouldn't be as healthy. We would actually still make the same amount of money because we'd have to have the right production to make 10 million. That all we did was just cut off four of it and I still get the same result. So this just goes back to the emotional side where someone told me somewhere. I attached to that emotion because it felt really good without looking at logistics. Then I looked at logistics and said, wait, I don't have to do an extra 4 million. This is incredible. And it just goes a really long way to show that like you obsessing and comparing yourself to someone else online who's saying to make six figures, if that's not what you want, what do you actually want to take home? And let's reverse engineer that number.
Yeah, it's possible. It is possible. But it
Yeah,
all comes down to figuring out, what do I want? And
exactly.
most people have a really,
Mhm.
really hard time answering that because the world
Totally.
is so noisy. We've been
Mhm.
conditioned to believe that anything less than a 10K month is failure. When in
Totally.
reality, it's like, well, what do you want? Do you just want to be able to
Yeah.
take your family on vacation each year?
And that's
Maybe you're in,
perfect.
right, exactly. Maybe you're
Yeah.
just in a really busy season of life where
Yeah.
you have little kids and they need you. That's
Yeah.
okay. But until
Mhm.
you take the time to figure out, what do you truly want? And I like to take this even a step deeper and go,
Yeah.
well, why? Why
Yeah.
do you really want it?
Yeah.
That's powerful. And that'll keep you going on those days where business is tough,
Yeah.
and the
Totally.
emotions start to kick in. And then you go and revisit that why. And it's like, okay, yeah, I do want to be able to give freely and generously to
Yeah.
whatever, whenever, and never have to worry about what is in my
Yeah.
bank account ever again, because I know it's more than enough than I'll ever need. So,
Yeah.
it really comes down to, what do I want and why do I want it? And that is
Exactly.
so powerful.
Yeah.
Alyssa, I loved our conversation today. Where can we learn more about you? How can we get into your world? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so best place to go if you ever want to like voice note me directly. I love voice notes. I'm obsessed with them. Is Instagram. That's at Magnetic Profits. You can also go to magneticprofits.com if you want to just peek around, look at what we do. We offer bookkeeping. We also offer high level strategy. We also even offer like VIP weeks where we can like rip apart your whole business, see what's wrong in four major parts of your business: operations, sales and marketing, team, and I'm missing one of our components, and it's going to, oh, client work deliverable, the most important one. And we can tell you from a financial lens where you're actually bleeding a lot of this stuff. So I'm genuinely here to support everybody. I really truly believe that more women should feel more empowered. The percent of women in business, just so you know this fun fact, is less than 2% who are making over seven figures. And I think that is ridiculous and that I'm on a mission to actually change that percent. And it all starts with just the support and being able to guide people. So for anyone listening, I am an open book. I just love humans in general and I want to see everyone win and succeed. And that is literally my goal here at Magnetic Profits.
I love it. Yes, I am right here beside you. Let's link arms and break through
Yes.
that 2% because that is ridiculous. And we together can change this.
Yeah.
Alyssa, thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, remember to leverage your data and shatter your sales plateau.
Woohoo, thanks.
Are you loving what you're hearing? Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.